And as usual, we always pay our respects and acknowledge the Wadawurrung people, the traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and we do acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. Welcome everybody. You can see there's only 4 of us in real time at the table tonight, but there's 2 of us on the screen, Councillor Contell and Councillor Asher, both some distance away, and we're sweating on nothing going wrong with the IT system and the weightless ether. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce to you also Councillor Maloney, Mayor, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Nelson. Meanwhile, we have our officers who will be supporting the case tonight. In fact, Julian Pollard, the Senior Statutory Planner, will be presenting the case tonight and will be supported by his senior staff, Shane Pritchard, Team Leader Statutory Planning, and John Rush, who's behind us, keeping the IT business going. He's the Coordinator of Statutory Planning, and Joanne Van Sluggeren, Manager of City Development, but not only that, Acting Executive Director of Planning and Design. So thanks very much everyone. And we do have apologies tonight from Councillor Aitken, Councillor Harwood, Councillor Murray and Councillor Cudwell. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? None. So I'd like to confirm the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 27th of April 2023. In fact, only 3 of us were at that meeting. Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. And I'll second it. No, it's Councillor Asher will second that. Thank you very much. I've put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. So we just follow the usual procedure for hearing items. And just to remind you what that procedure is, Julian Pollard will present a brief summary of the written report of the committee. The panel, that's us, may ask questions of the officer. The objectors or submitters will detail their concerns to the committee, and we do need to observe a 3-minute time limit. I would ask you too to try and, those who do speak, to try and say something different as much as you can. We don't want to hear the same objection over and over, but we'll try and be flexible with that. The panel may ask questions of the objector or submitter. The applicant will then detail their application and respond to any objector submitter concerns to the committee. They can take 5 or 10 minutes over that. The panel can then ask questions of the applicant, and the panel will then make further discussions and make a decision. It's important to understand that the decision of this committee is the final decision of the council, acting under delegated authority, and if anyone is aggrieved by the decision of this committee, they can appeal to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal in Melbourne, and our staff, of course, can assist with this process during office hours. So the matter for consideration tonight is application number PP 1065 2022, 49 Newcombe Street, Portarlington, where it's proposed buildings and works for the development of a multi-level building for 10 dwellings, apartments, two retail spaces, subdivision, create access to a transport zone 2 and reduction of car parking requirement. So I'll leave it with you, please, Mr. Julian.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. First of all, we'd just like to acknowledge that this is the second application of the site after the Planning Minister set up the Portarlington Advisory Committee for the first application, where the recommendations are located within the Planning Committee report under the planning history, and the reasons for its refusal as well. The site's located within the Commercial 1 zone, partially within the Heritage Overlay and the Design and Development Overlay Schedule 21, which all trigger a planning permit for the proposal like they did in the previous one. The application seeks a reduction of 3 spaces, with the visitor spaces and commercial spaces waived. This has been considered appropriate as the basement ramp has secure parking, which makes it impractical for visitors to use. It is acknowledged that the amended application has addressed many of the recommendations within the Planning Advisory Committee from the previous application. However, in relation to building and landscape design and the urban design and views, the amended design response is considered not as satisfactory from an officer perspective. I'll just take you through the existing site conditions. This is as you come in on the western front along Portarlington there. 49 Newcombe Street currently contains a split level building used for a commercial tenancy, single-storey built form from Newcombe Street, located approximately in the southern front section of the site. The northern section of Newcombe Street along this section between Harding Street and Pearce Street contains a single-storey development, which is it's a small commercial strip, with some forms of multi-level development constructed on the southern side of Newcombe Street, further east at 72 Newcombe Street and 76 to 80 Newcombe Street, where we've got the Grand Hotel as well, with a recently approved multi-level development approved at 20 to 34 Newcombe Street, which is also on the southern side. To the north of the subject site is public parks and the Portarlington foreshore and pier. This is considered the site is visually prominent when viewed from the north, which is considered a significant tourist feature of Portarlington and assists in setting the seaside character of Portarlington. I'll take you through the proposal, which is reasonably similar to the last one. We've gone down to 10 apartments there, and if you refer to the plans on TP08 to TP013 for all floor plans, and TP017 to 018 for all elevations. The basement level provides 21 car parking spaces, with the upper 4 levels providing 10 apartments and 2 retail spaces which front onto Newcombe Street. The development proposes 7 3-bedroom apartments, 2 2-bedroom apartments and a 4-bedroom apartment on the top level. The application was advertised and letters were sent to the owners and occupiers and a sign was placed on site. After this, 244 objections were received and 48 letters of support. The main themes raised by the objectors included the modern design does not complement the coastal setting, the proposal will impact view lines to and from the town centre, the proposal will be detrimentally noticeable from the entrance to the town from the west, impact on car parking within Portarlington, the site should be used as a community space such as a public park, and overshadow into neighbouring properties. As a failure to determine was lodged with VCAT, a consultation meeting was unable to be held. However, a compulsory conference will be held at VCAT on Monday the 10th of July 2023 with the applicant and objectors and council all to be there. We'll move along to the development response to the Portarlington Committee findings. The table within the Planning Committee meeting agenda on pages 54 to 62 goes through in detail the Portarlington Planning Committee's themes, conclusions and whether or not if the amended design response complies. It's considered the amended application now complies with traffic and car parking, waste and recycling, environmentally sustainable design, amenity and heritage. However, it is considered that the design still does not meet the committee conclusions in relation to urban design and views and building and landscape design, which will be discussed from now on. The Advisory Committee's position is that the previous design severely compromised the visual prominence of the Grand Hotel when viewed from the foreshore, and the proposed building would not be unobtrusive when viewed from the foreshore as well. Although the new application has reduced the upper levels of the building to the northern boundary from the existing application, the application was referred to Council's Urban Design Department, who provided comments on how the amended proposal responds to the Portarlington Advisory Committee, where they still consider the upper levels when viewed from the north, the 3rd and 4th storey elements. That design is not visually unobtrusive when viewed from the public shoreline, where the built form still retains a visual presence. The building will be still seen to the parapet of the Grand Hotel. The city's urban design team recommends to address that the upper level should be removed and the 3rd storey should have greater recession from the northern boundary to not dominate within the wider landscape setting when viewed from the shoreline. It is noted that this proposal is attempted to break up the built form and its associated bulk when viewed from the north, which now includes a central recess on what previously was a larger mass. It is considered these elements by the city's Urban Design Department are only minor elements of articulation to the northern elevation, and more articulation is required along the northern elevation to break up the built form, as the materials used are predominantly the same and the colour schedules are very similar. To further break up the northern elevation, the City's Urban Design Department are of the view that greater setbacks of the articulated middle section of the building should be recessed further, where articulation should include the external walls of the northern elevation of the building, not just the balconies, as well as changing the materials of this section of the building to meet the advisory findings. In terms of the building and landscape design, the front setback of 0 metres to Newcombe Street has been retained to meet the committee conclusions. It is noted the amended design responses generally maintain the profile to Newcombe Street, aside from a change to the top level setback, which is the second floor, which has been reduced from 12.05 metres to 9.05 metres. The upper level will remain setback behind the main gable of the post office building to meet the heritage requirements. The air conditioning units have also been relocated to meet the committee conclusions. However, there are significant concerns from Council's Urban Design Department with the 2 metre setbacks due to the location of the balconies along the northern boundary, where it is considered the setback does not provide for appropriate landscaping that can be a layered design. And when we talk about a layered design, we talk about providing more than one row of landscaping with different heights of species to kind of break up the built form, or support the ability for appropriate species to be used within the landscaping that are suitable for breaking up the built form greater. This is demonstrated within the landscape plan provided, where the single row of trees would only grow to the second storey of the proposed building. The City's Urban Design Department seeks that there needs to be greater setbacks provided from the northern boundary that will allow for a large response to landscaping and selecting substantial plant species to be planted to lessen the built form of the development. In relation to the committee finding regarding glazing along the northern elevation, it is agreed that the applicant has provided a sufficient design response to reduce the amount of glazing along the northern elevation. The glazing along this section is covered to a significant degree by timber screening. It is also considered that timber screening is a consistent material element located within the building designs within Portarlington. And in light of the above, it is considered the proposed second design does not meet the Portarlington Advisory Report conclusions in relation to urban design and views, building and landscape design and state-based policy in relation to distinctive landscapes, the DDO 21 and the variations to clause 58, and therefore is respectfully requested that the application is refused, subject to the grounds within the Planning Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Do we have any questions at this stage? No questions at this stage? Well, then I'll call the first objector forward, Rachel Sumic Antonic. Rachel not here? Then I'll call Vesna Grant. Please come forward and please sit at the desk. Take time and introduce yourself first, please. Please sit down.
Yes, thank you. I have been a ratepayer in Portarlington for probably about 45 years now, perhaps a little bit longer. And my concerns are, I'll just raise them if I may. I'd like to state that all the other developments on the north side of Newcombe Street are community-oriented facilities. We've got Parks Hall, the public amenities, community hall, skate park, playground, rotunda, kindergarten, fire station and a cafe. And I would like to see that the community focus is retained on the north side of Newcombe Street. My second point, because some of the others have been mentioned already, is that the site has been seemingly historically public parkland, and I'm going back quite some time, but it was somehow resumed by the federal government for use as a post office. And when no longer used for that purpose, apparently it was sold privately without community involvement. So given its historic use as parkland, it should now be brought back by the federal or state government and returned to the community as parkland, not given over to private development, which would prevent such processes occurring. Another point I would like to raise, please, is that there is much discussion about the view from the water back towards the main street and the vision of the hotel, but I think the proposed development also represents jarring overdevelopment in the precinct, and the view from the bay and the pier would be impacted by this proposal. I'd also like to mention that this is an aberration to other developments on the north side because it's motivated by profit and commercial gain rather than being a public facility. And I would like to state that the rights of the public, that is the visitors and the residents, should not be subjugated to the demands of a few. I consider that to be unjust and inequitable. The Geelong foreshore is very honourably protected, and it's enhanced by the absence of inappropriate developments. I think Portarlington deserves no less. And I'm sure that there would be regret if this proposal were allowed to go ahead.
Thank you, Vesna.
Thank you, Mayor.
Just
Thank
stay
you,
there, stay there a moment.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions? I'll just ask you a question. You say that there's a desire of the community to have that land as parkland. Have you made any efforts to discuss that with the applicant?
Not with the applicant, but I'm aware that the Portarlington Community Association has raised that as one of the main issues. At the moment, I'm still working in Melbourne and I'm commuting, so my time is limited. Thank
you, Vesna. Just a moment. Just waiting for another question, but if there's not, please, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll call Marianne Scott. Marianne not here? Vivian Linford Gibbs. Thank you, Vivian.
My name is Vivian and I live in Ocean Grove. My family and I love visiting Portarlington and being able to relax in the calm, beautiful environment. It's a unique area with the stunning bay, foreshore, parks and gardens, the historic former post office and the recently restored Grand Hotel. Very precious assets, and I think the seaside community, we need to protect them. Now that the Portarlington has ferry service from Melbourne, many of our friends and family have another way to visit us and use some of the tourist packages to explore this special area. The current view of the town from the ferry terminal is like stepping into another world. It is wonderful to meet our friends and family at the foreshore, walk up to the playground and gardens, and then enjoy lunch at the Grand Hotel or wander to the bakery to enjoy the atmosphere and view the bay. The whole experience would be upset by an obtrusive new building being visible from the foreshore. Also, the view of the bay and foreshore would no longer be seen from Newcombe Street. Instead, there would be a residential commercial building totally unsuited in character to the seaside feel of the area. The north side of Newcombe Street is special, as like other seaside towns in the Bellarine, it has gardens and parks and community uses that are recreational and in keeping with the location. The proposal site would be much more suited to be used as a park, integrating the preschool and former post office. The former post office was built in 1888 and is heritage listed. It needs to be given prominence in recognition of its proud history. A large building taking up an extremely large footprint next to it will not do this. At present, only 25% of the site is taken up by a building. More retail space is not needed in this area. COVID-19 has changed shopping habits, leading to more online shopping. There are many empty shops in the Bellarine, at least 2 in Newcombe Street, and this pattern is unlikely to change in the near future. The preschool on the northern side of the street is expected to expand, so the proposed development would mean more traffic in this area, which would also pose more danger to children and pedestrians. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Vivian. Do we have any questions? I'm sorry, we don't do it that way. Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you.
Now, I noticed some people came in a bit late. I just want to double check. Did Marianne come in at all then, or Rachel? Marianne. Rachel, if you'd like to speak. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It is a privilege. Can someone let me know who Roger is?
I'm sorry, you have to speak through the chair. Just go ahead, please.
The town planner who's representing the owner. Roger, thank you for your determination to create safe housing. We need you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
We all need a safe home that enhances our well-being. I would like to humbly acknowledge the stolen lands known as Australia, on which I am so grateful to live. I acknowledge the traditional owners. I pay my respect to their elders. They are strong and resilient in the face of ongoing colonisation. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Roger, according to your bio, my understanding is you are passionate about achieving excellent outcomes for your clients and the community. We, the community, hope you stick to your word. Let me have a little look.
Excuse me, can you please speak through the chair, and if I have to speak to you again about it, I'll have to ask you to stop speaking. So just make your presentation.
Thank you.
Please.
From what I can see in this room, most of us appear to have the privilege of being white, straight, cisgender, able-bodied and literate. Therefore, we hold great power. Add to this appearing to be male and having significant land ownership. In this instance, you hold much greater power. Roger, the land your client...
Excuse me, please address the chair.
So do I say chair?
Yes.
And that's you?
Yes.
Chair, the land your client wishes to put a multi-storey structure on needs to be sold back to the government or returned to the First Nations peoples, so it can be returned to a green open space of reflection and reconciliation. We need you, Chair, to create safe, eco-accountable, affordable housing on land that is suitable and in locations that are appropriate for this type of structure. We especially need you to collaborate with social justice entities to provide housing solutions for those who do not hold such privilege. Roger, apologies.
Okay.
Chair, if your structure goes ahead as requested, it will cause me significant distress. It will create a sense of hopelessness within the wider community, and it will breach a number of planning objectives as per the Portarlington Structure Plan and the Urban Design Framework. On the land known as 49 Newcombe Street, Imagine a healing place where the soil has been regenerated with local Indigenous trees and wildflowers, where there are a variety of shaded seating options inclusive of all ages and all abilities.
Vivian, you'll have to close fairly soon. The time's up.
Yeah, just one sec. A place to reflect on the truth-telling and learn of the ancient ways and wisdoms of our First Nation peoples on Wadawurrung country. Chair, be part of the hope. There is always another way. Please consider using your power infused with compassion and generosity at its core. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Do we have any questions?
My name is Rachel.
Excuse me, Rachel. I do apologise. I think I've said that a couple of times. I'm sorry. So, any questions? Thanks, Rachel. So, is Jeff Farey here? Come forward. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman Mason, Mayor Sullivan, councillors. Thanks very much for the opportunity to present the views of the Portarlington Community Association to you tonight. And can I also thank your officers for their professionalism and courtesy that we've had in our dealings with them up until this point. And I think that professionalism is reflected in the quality of the report that you have before you tonight. Chairman, in a sense, this feels, I think, to a lot of us like Groundhog Day. We've been here before. We've had a run on this issue back in 2020. We support the views that are contained in the officer's report, but we're perhaps not, we're not as the same view of them that there's been significant changes to the plans. We believe that there's been cosmetic changes to the plans that were rejected previously by the Victorian government, and we find ourselves all here again discussing the same things 3 years down the track. At the outset, I would like to make the point that the Portarlington Community Association, contrary to what you might have been told, is not a bunch of old fuddy-duddies that is opposed to all development in Portarlington. Indeed, this development on this site is the first official opposition that the Portarlington Community Association has raised to any development since the establishment of COG. You'll be aware that we did not object to the development of the Kudos 60 apartment complex on the south side of Newcombe Street, which you considered a little while ago, nor have we objected to projects such as the Chocolatieri. The Portarlington, you have before you, Chair and councillors, I think the report said 244 objections. We've been asked to speak on behalf of some of those objectors, not all of them. Some of you, I'm sure, know that I spent some time working in public administration, both in the state and in the federal jurisdiction. There is a rule of thumb in both of those jurisdictions that for every person who takes the trouble to submit an official objection, you can assume that there are at least 10 out there who are thinking along similar lines. If that rule of thumb applies here, and thanks for the assistance from the gallery, if that rule of thumb applies here, then that suggests that of Portarlington's total population of some 3,600 people, some 2,700 of them are opposed to this proposal, more than 75% of the population. So that is a...
Settle down, please. Just give Jeff his turn. Everyone will have their turn.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Thanks for your support. Chair, I don't propose, in view of the time constraints that are imposed upon us, to go through line, chapter and verse all of the propositions that were made in the submission that the Portarlington Community Association made to Council on this, and many of which have been capably covered by Julian in his summary to you today. Suffice it to say, we believe that this particular proposal is deficient in many respects in regard to the design development overlays that apply to it. And I will conclude my remarks as quickly as I possibly can. I think it's important to note that we don't set ourselves up as architectural critics. We're not opposed to the architectural design of this particular project. What we say to you, councillors, is that it's wrong for this particular site. As other objectors have said, it is the vision of the community that this site, having regard to its history, return to public open space. We realise that is beyond the remit of council, but we think it's important that you're aware that that is an ongoing campaign that we're running. If we allow a structure such as this to proceed on this particular sensitive site, then we believe that future generations would well ask what possessed us to do that. It would be Portarlington's equivalent of the late and unlamented Gas and Fuel Corporation towers and the unfortunately not late and still lamented Kale Expressway that exists in Sydney.
You're going to have to finish soon, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. I will. Thank you for your giving us the opportunity to speak to you this evening, and we respectfully urge you to support the officer's recommendation. Happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Thanks, Jeff. So, do we have any questions? No, there are no questions from the gallery, I'm sorry. Any questions from the panel? No? Thanks very much, Jeff.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, councillors.
So now we have Therese McKenny, who is a supporter. Is Therese here? Therese. Thank you, Therese.
Good evening, thank you. Yes, the name is Therese. Sorry for breaking, just didn't have a glass of water, but I was absolutely horrified. I am from the family Noongas from Western Australia. My skin might be white, but my family are dark, okay? So I'm a bit shaken. That doesn't affect me a lot. No, that affects me a lot, but you never assume who is in the gallery. And you know that because as councillors, you are aware not to talk like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep, go ahead.
What somebody had said earlier. Okay, my name is Therese McKinney. I actually purchased down here in 2016. I had been coming down to like St Leonard's. I only found the Ballerine about 10 years ago and stayed in St Leonard's, and as I came up, I came through to get the coastal view and saw Portarlington. I said to my friend, what a quirky little Chinese restaurant. Look at that dishevelled hotel. Isn't it cute and quaint? He goes, no, we don't stop there. It's full of riffraff and brogans and retirees. This is going back, okay? I'd only just come here. Well, that was fair enough. I got rid of him anyway. So I then ventured down and I discovered this beautiful little haven and a house I fell in love with. I was living up in Hobson's Bay and I work in Hobson's Bay. I purchased in 2016 and loved this place. The day I came down to actually view the harbour, the ferry was just actually leaving when I purchased it. I was watching that safe harbour come building as I travelled down with the rocks thrown in. I have a lovely house with a beautiful view. I sit where we call the residentials, the stayers, so not down on the foreshore. So I'm up there, a little bit rural. I also was amazed with the advancement and thinking that person that said to me, it's only riffraff that lives here, boy, would he be kicking himself now because it's a treasure. The development is always for forward-thinking people. You councillors, you've been elected because you're forward-thinking. I actually am a community development worker. I run a childcare centre, education centre. I've actually ran for council several times. I've been on urban planning advisory boards for Hobson's Bay. And I know the heritage and the heritage character also. So when you're looking on the North Shore where there is in a trade, and I'm also Vice President of the Newport Traders Association, and I was the one that revamped it after it had collapsed back in 2006. So looking at a trading precinct, there is already businesses on that side of the road. If it is a business, and that business can stay there and we'll have a corrugated iron looking shed. Development, if you're looking at what are we going, we don't like the way it looks. We need to discuss that a bit further and then speak to the developers on that part. Return to parkland, I'd like to say, who is going to offer to buy it? What price is going to be put on that? I can see also in a parkland, I volunteer down here, there's enough places running around for me doing my festivals or when I volunteer for festivals, and also near a childcare centre, which I do run one, having a residence there, which was 2030 high density, to have it near transport, we've got the ferry, to have residential on top of commercial or retail is a safety, a security. So they would keep an eye on any unsavoury activity that's in the park, things unwanted being thrown into the children's yard. There's no reason why that childcare centre cannot be rebuilt. There is Commonwealth money out there.
Can you start winding up, please,
Okay.
Teresa?
So all I'm saying is that forward thinking is that development would enhance the gateway to Geelong and to Ballerine. It will also be a safety area, security for parkland and for the people that are living in there. You've got businesses, cafe, restaurant already on that side. Let Portarlington share both sides of the street in businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese.
Okay.
Just wait a moment, wait.
Oh, sorry.
Have we got any questions? No? Thank you very much, Therese.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Mayor, no, Claire, to introduce me.
So now we have the applicant, Roger Munn and Greg Murray. Are you going to present together or just one presenter?
I might sit down for a start, Councillor Mason, and then I'll invite Greg up once I'm finished, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, councillors. We've been on an interesting journey with this site. The starting point for us with this new application is really the Portarlington Advisory Committee report. It provides a thorough assessment of the previous proposal, and it's appropriate to use that to inform a redesign, and that's where we've started through this journey. We acknowledge the uniqueness of the site and the sensitive coastal interface. To use the words of the committee report, the site has a responsibility to sensitively manage its northern interface to the foreshore, as well as interfaces to the heritage building and kindergarten. On a personal note, the development team, in terms of everyone who has an ownership or a stake in this development, actually lives in Portarlington. So the comments around it being greedy developers and benefiting few, these people do live here. They have done good developments in the area. And they have an interest in seeing a good outcome for the site. The provisions that support this proposal, additional retailing, urban consolidation and additional diversity and density of housing on the site. The site is in an increased housing diversity area which encourages residential growth and increased diversity. The committee was satisfied that the proposal responds appropriately to these policies. This is the previous proposal, mind you, obviously. Whilst these provisions and other policy support development, we acknowledge that it needs to respect and enhance the valued character of Portarlington, including protecting key views from the bay. These planning layers, the zone, the DDO, the DAL, the structure plan, it makes for a very complex site and a complex assessment. but it also informs the development opportunity. To highlight a few of the committee points, a high density and diverse residential use is envisaged by the IHDA, and activity centre policy can be accommodated within a design that provides a positive contribution to the area and is reflective of local context. The committee acknowledged that the coastal character is ill-defined in the planning scheme, and relevant policies do not describe or analyse what specifically distinguishes coastal character for Portarlington. It does, however, define what must be taken into consideration, namely promoting contemporary design that reflects the existing scale, setbacks, spacing, forms and materiality of the buildings in the locality and protecting key views. As we know, policy and provisions identify key views to be protected, including the Grand Hotel from the foreshore and from the town centre to the foreshore in the bay, and ensuring development is not visually obtrusive from the foreshore. Focusing on some of the key committee findings that have informed our design response, it's a combination of height together with the width of the building, with no breaks in the built form, materiality and minimal landscaping that resulted in the building being unacceptable. So height per se was not a key problem. The committee acknowledged that the predominantly 1 to 2 storey scale in the area was likely to change, and noticed that acknowledged that the increased housing diversity area policy encourages 2 and 3 storey development that is responsive to local context. The committee accepted that the loss of the current clear view to the bay is a reasonable expectation for redevelopment of this commercial 1 land within the town centre. And that's really critical. We're talking about protection of views, but the committee acknowledged that the view to the bay was something that can never be protected if this site's going to be reasonably developed. So the focus should be on the view from the north, the Grand Hotel, how this building sits within that context. And I don't know whether what you have open in front of you. I thought we might be sharing it on the big screen, but I'd ask that you turn to TP 25 and TP 30 if you haven't had a good look over those renders already. Which painted quite a different picture to the previous proposal. Mr. Farry from the PCA talked about Groundhog Day. Well, I disagree strongly with that. Yes, we've got a development on this site which is for retail and apartments and is of a scale that's larger than what exists there at the moment, but we've gone through significant redesign and consultation with council staff to try and find a response that obviously meets good development potential and urban consolidation policy, but is also responsive to policy and in particular the findings of that planning committee and their reporting to the Minister. So those things include the provision of materials that better reflect the existing character of Newcombe Street. We've introduced brown brick, soft wood elements. One of the key things was the material, the use of glazing. We've gone to significant lengths to reduce the use of glazing or reflective elements. We've looked at improving the proportion of solid mass to glass ratio wherever we possibly can. Greater articulation to reduce the visual massing from the foreshore, greater setbacks of the upper levels. This building is always going to be visible from the foreshore. It's around what's reasonable.
Roger, if you wouldn't mind me interrupting for a moment, just want you to understand that there's a sort of a time limit here. You've got coordinated with Greg over the total time?
Yeah, sure. Where are we at the moment, Councillor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where are we up to at the moment? Got 4 minutes left of 10. Time flies, Joe. And so we've gone to great lengths to try and improve the view of this building from the foreshore, how it presents. There's talk of landscaping. We've softened it, landscaping, layered up the building. It was presenting as quite a broad mass across the site. We've now proposed 2 quite linear, finer grain elements to the proposal with a recess in between them. And those perspectives clearly show that this building is subservient to the Grand Hotel when viewed from the foreshore. I do want Greg to have the opportunity to speak. I think the fact that we do have 48 letters of support demonstrates that there are a lot of people that do support this. We need housing, we need short-term housing on the Bellarine. This is a great example of how that can be achieved. I will leave it there, conscious of time, and I'll invite Greg up.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, Greg Murray is my name. I would ask for a little bit of leeway because I have, well, I've certainly got quite a bit to say, but I'm going to have to jump from one thing to another here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll do what I can. I thank you for taking the opportunity, giving me the opportunity to address the council tonight. I could speak to the reasons why and if you should vote in support of our development. However, I believe our planner has more than covered that with his earlier comments. Instead, I want to focus on two things. Given their association with the PCA, whether or not some of the councillors sitting on this panel should even have the right to be voting on our planning application at all. And I am happy to provide you with concerns to support that assertion a little later. What exactly do you want on this site? I'm directing the question to Bellarine councillors Mason, Asher and Sullivan. What is it? What is your bottom line? You are the Bellarine councillors. What is your bottom line? You've had talks with the PCA. I know you've had talks with the PCA. Now tell us publicly, what is your bottom line on that?
Keep making a presentation, please.
Right, okay, I thought you'd say that. When we first applied for a permit, we believed in the process. We believed in the system and we believed in fair play. And above all, we believed we had the right to replace an existing building with a new one on the land we had purchased in good faith. From our perspective, the system has let us down badly, and clearly the law of due process we thought we could rely on has let us down. Throughout this whole process, the PCA has ensured political interference has been rife and ongoing where our application is concerned. Their negative campaign has survived and flourished, not on a fair go or because of any real substance, but more, not on what you know, but more on who you know. All of which has created an unlevel playing field which once again has been totally unfair to us. It appears to me at least the wink and nod system has reached some of you councillors assembled here tonight. I say that because clearly some councillors on this panel have already made up their minds about our application before hearing both sides of the argument. In fact, we believe some councillors have already shown their obvious bias against our development by colluding with the PCA, which quite frankly, apart from being disgraceful, is totally unfair again to us. Having said that, as I've said before, I believe there are at least 2 and probably 3 councillors on this panel tonight who, in our opinion, need to recuse themselves from any vote on this application. Remembering when council laws are elected, they have a responsibility to reach decisions with an open mind and are in fact obliged to hear both sides of an argument. This is particularly relevant when it comes to planning applications. Allow me to provide you with a further example of obvious displays of councillor bias by some of the assembled councillors. Some 3 weeks ago, we were informed by the planning department that the Mayor, Trent Sullivan, wanted this meeting to be held in Portarlington. Anyway, after we heard of this outrageous request to move the meeting and we had picked our collective jaws up from the ground, we informed the planning department we were having none of it. This self-serving attempt by the Mayor to move this meeting was as clear to us as I'm sure it is to everyone else here tonight. By trying to have this meeting held in Portarlington, it would have been nothing more than a grandstand play by him to publicly vote against our proposal in front of a stacked room of PCA members. If that was allowed to happen, it would have been a disgraceful attempt of political grandstand. I'm nearly finished.
I'm giving you a little bit of extra time.
Okay, well, you feature in this next one, so I'd like you to give me just a touch more. Anyway, I realise what I've just said about Councillor Sullivan is subjection on my part. However, what is not subjective is the blatant collusion that occurred between Councillors Mason and Sullivan with the PCA, and I offer up the following example. Some time ago, when the PCA was soliciting signatures in Newcombe Street without a permit, they were asked why they didn't have a permit. The answer to that was the owner of the old post office was advised that a permit had been waived and public liability for people by Councillor Trent Sullivan. Councillor Sullivan emailed back and said, "What you have raised is most concerning. I have not given any group permits, waivers nor permission to do any of the actions as described below. I do not even have the operational power to do so. I believe this group is being organised by the Portarlington Community Association. I will contact their president, Jeff Farey, this morning for further clarification." In another email, Councillor Sullivan writes,
I think that
"I assure you that Council has not issued any permits to this group. However, I do see that Councillor Mason has issued a request that the group be assisted in obtaining one." Now, Councillor, had you made your mind up way back then? I'm asking you.
Have you finished now?
Yeah, I've finished, but I'd like you to answer the question.
As far as I'm concerned,
It's not irrelevant, and you should recuse yourself from voting on this matter, Councillor.
I'm not aware of what you're talking about,
Oh.
and I am not going to have an even mind about this, and you're not making it any easier for anyone to make a rational decision.
Why not?
So have you finished now?
No, I haven't. I've got one more.
Well, your time's well and truly up.
Well, you can try and block me, Councillor, but you're achieving nothing. You're achieving nothing.
Your time's up now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'll get up. Don't worry.
Any questions?
I do have a question just with respect to the engagement of councillors if they wanted to comment in rebuttal to the discussion, or if there's been any correspondence, just for the record, I suppose.
Mr. Chairman? Absolutely. No, I'm happy to address concerns. It's every community groups, every organisations, every individual's right to come to council and ask for assistance and information. Asking for information, asking for assistance is zero signs of bias in any regards. Much the same as if people have an application and they require assistance in contacting officers about those applications. Assisting the community in furthering to access information, which they may very well be entitled to, is zero sign of bias in any regard.
Can I just answer that?
I wasn't addressing anybody in the audience.
No, well, I'm addressing you.
Crowd, so it was greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just quickly,
Thanks
Mr. Chairman, Councillor, the people from the PCA were obviously told if anyone asks you about a permit, tell them Councillor Sullivan said it was okay.
I'm also happy to yeah.
Aggressive.
Your microphone, Jim. Microphone's come off. There you go, it's back on now.
Okay, so have you finished your answer, Councillor?
Absolutely no. I'm happy to clarify though as well that the correspondence was indeed correct. I did contact the president of the PCA that morning or that afternoon, and I was referred to that information was incorrect and that nobody from the PCA had said such information.
No other questions?
No.
Councillors, we've reached the point where we might have a discussion, or is there anybody ready to make a statement or a recommendation?
I'm happy to move a recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
This has been an item which has been before us a couple of times now, and now we have an application in front of us, and we must judge our decision purely on the application before us, not on past histories, but what we have in front of us right now. Without the officers have worked hard and long on this, I very much trust their expertise. And with that, I'm happy to move the officer recommendation that the responsible authority, having considered all matters which the Planning and Environment Act 1987 requires it to consider, that we advocate to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal that the application be refused on grounds on proposals that does not meet clause 11.03-5S in regard to the urban design response when viewed from Portarlington Public Foreshore. The proposal does not meet the same clause in relation to making a positive architectural and urban design contribution. Point 3, that the proposal does not satisfy the requirements of design and development.
Councillor Sullivan, just while you're making the you're moving the motion, do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder?
Just going to second it from the Bellarine.
Councillor Asher.
I'm happy to second it, Councillor Mason, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right.
Continue.
Point 3, that the proposal does not satisfy the requirements of Design and Development Overlay Schedule 21. 4, the proposal does not meet the recommendations of the Portarlington Advisory Committee report in relation to urban design, views, buildings and landscape design. And 5, the proposal does not sufficiently respond to the objectives and or standards of clause 58, including urban context and landscaping.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Asher, you wish to speak as a seconder?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mason, Mr. Chair. Look, this is obviously a contentious application. It has been in and out a few times. There is obviously a lot of emotion around it. I will say, though, that nobody really does themselves a service when they make personal attacks on people in public meetings, where everybody really needs to keep their manners to themselves, I think would be my first point. I do sympathise with the people who purchased originally and the developers of this, because it is obviously not the dream that they had, but I think community sentiment and the planning regulations are just working against them. So, as has been recommended by our team, and they've obviously put a lot of work into this and thought about this long and hard, because this is obviously not the first time we've had to consider it, I support the recommendation from the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asher. Any other speakers? I think I should add to it. I also do support the motion. I think it's disappointing that we still have a 4-storey building when I do note there's been some number of adjustments being made, but nevertheless it's turned out that the officers don't support this recommendation for numbers of reasons, not just one. One reason is the 4th storey. Another reason is that it hasn't achieved the aim to protect the seaside character of the township, and the integration between the foreshore reserve and the town centre hasn't been achieved. So though there's been some attempts at negotiation and discussion, it hasn't gone far enough. That's a disappointment in the sense that it could have gone further. So I do support this motion as has been put. Any other speakers? Motion, those in favour? I think I've noted that it's unanimous. Thank you.